Well, just to start off, basically, how I got to where I am, like who I am, and all that sort of stuff. Um, Now, I guess even from when I was a little child, even when I was like born, like just a baby, my mother had told me about some things that were very interesting. That as soon as I heard, it was like, now that's quite intriguing, especially considering the way that I look at things nowadays. Um, she had mentioned to me that, or she had actually told me directly that I was not a very uh, human interactive child. Like, I was more to myself. Whenever someone would try and get my attention, even when I was a baby, I would sort of wander off, do my own thing. Or wander off, I guess, crawl off, or whatever. Anyways, I was more so secluded to myself. Now, I had two theories about that. Because even when I was a young child growing up, I have sort of the same mechanical processes and thoughts as I did back then, as far as either I was just, I didn't really, the some of the small things that some people would do just to me seemed very foreign, and so as far as interaction was concerned, when they do those things, it was like, I don't know how to deal with this, so I would do my own thing. Or it could simply have been I was so fascinated with the mechanics of the world and how things work, the physics, and even though I may not have had the mind to fully process those things, even then you could just imagine how overwhelming it could be to a child that's just beginning to experience and feel and process things like that. And for a child, you almost might think it could be, what's the word for it? It could be overwhelming. And so that's a possibility. And just because of that, maybe human interaction and that sort of thing, I found distracted me from experiencing life, as it were, at that time. Now, I have found, in my older age, I'm 22 by this point, and I mean, when I look at, like, I find now at this point in my life, I can actually get more out of my experiences through human interaction, or rather, their perspective is inclusive to mine, as it sort of expands my view of the world. So as far as that's concerned, so that was sort of when I was just a little child. As I was growing up, I found that I had a lot of issues with kids that were in school. Kids would do things like they would hit each other, they would do all these weird things, and sometimes people would cry, and the next day, they'd be back, being friends and stuff. And it was like, to me, it was like, this is overwhelming. Like, why are people doing these things? I mean, I'm not going to say that I've never hit anyone or something like that. Actually, many of the times I've done it over things that stress me out, as far as people just, well, you know what, I'll get to that in a second. That's actually an interesting story. But as far as my first interactions with other children were concerned, were very sad. Like, I would run into kids, they would do certain things or whatnot, and I wouldn't understand why they were doing those things, like why they were saying those things. And I mean, I'm not saying that I was perfect when I was a little kid. I'm not saying that at all. But I never had the tools when I was growing up to understand why children were doing the things that they were doing, or even why some adults would do some of the things they were doing. But the truth is, I actually found that I got along with adults more than I did with people that were in my own age bracket, which was kind of funny, I guess. Well, even from my childhood, I had a lot of babysitters, and I came from a fairly good family. I guess upper middle class. I'm not sure if. Yeah, I really don't know where my father stood at that time as far as financially. I mean, he does okay now, but that's something different. But either way, as far as my upbringing is concerned, I never really felt that I sort of clicked with anyone or anything. I was I was unique through and through. There was nothing about me that that wanted to be with others as far as the things they were doing. I was more to myself. I liked doing things that were unique and whatnot. Now, later on in my years, in I guess grade 3 and up, I started trying to do the things that other people were doing. I tried to fit into the group because I wasn't feeling happy at all being unique, because there was so much peer pressure to be like other people were. So, I stopped wearing track pants and stuff, and I wore blue jeans and, t-shirts and all that other stuff, and I tried to wear cool shoes, and I tried to get in with the kids, with the crowds, talking to people. But even then, though, there were certain things that they didn't click with me. It was like, okay, I'll try to be as close to these people as possible, but I mean, certain things, no, forget it. And even in grade 3, it was hard for me because there were so many things that I wanted to do that I myself wanted to do, but no one else did. Or rather, the people that did those things were considered weird, or the outcasts. But as far as the details are concerned about that, it got very complicated, and by halfway through grade 7, my mom basically took me out of grade school because I was suffering from depression, and it was finally starting to catch up with my marks. As a matter of fact, the last day of 6th grade was probably one of the worst days I ever had in my grade school career. And as a matter of fact, the only one that and it was funny because I always wanted to find some way to contribute, but I didn't really know much at the time as far as what I could do. As far as my class was concerned, one of the things I did was this was particularly in 6th grade. Every morning, I'd come in early to class, and I would put down the chairs for everyone that were put up. Even at the end of the day, I would put the chairs up on the desks, any chairs that weren't already put up. And that actually became my routine. And, people, in a way, almost relied on it, like, oh, I forgot to put my chair up after class. It's like, it's all right, I got it. So, I mean, that became something very normal for me. And you know what? I think at some point, people really appreciated it. But you know what? My last year of school, I found out no one really cared. It was like, that's so weird. Like, why would someone want to do that? And you know what? I heard what they said, and I cried about it. Like, I was just devastated. Like, the fact that I would do that sort of thing, and I know it wasn't a really big thing or anything like that, but the fact that they would take such a small gesture of kindness and basically, or from what I understood, it could have been that I just didn't hear them right, or from previous incidences of dealing with people, I was sort of indoctrinated with the idea that people were just mean and cruel, despite the fact that I didn't want them to be that way, and perhaps as a result of that, I misinterpreted, but the fact is that I felt terrible as a result of what they did. But you know what? My teacher, he was really understanding. He gave me sort of a reward and some free things, and he said, you know what? I appreciate what you did, and I'm proud to have you as one of my students. At least I think that's what he said. He said something along those lines. And he was a good teacher. I enjoyed him quite a lot. No naming of names, though. But after that, it was, as far as grades were concerned, my grades then started to suffer, like, a lot. And that's the thing, too. Like, even during recesses, I wouldn't go outside if I didn't have to. If the teacher would allow me, I'd usually stay indoors and finish my work from a previous class. I'd use that 15 minutes or whatever to just do that. Or if I did go outside, usually I was outside by myself. Actually, for me, I'm not sure if I could say it's embarrassing or not, but the only group of people that were actually open to me just joining in with them, at least from what I understood, were the people that were in, like, special ed. Like, there were a couple people in there. They weren't retarded or anything like that. No, they were just, some of them were, either they were just goofy, they didn't really fit in, they did things that were kind of weird, or they had, well, most of them had disabilities. A lot of them were on, what's that drug that was prescribed to children and stuff with certain learning disabilities? I think it was people with ADD and ADHD. What is it that they gave them? LSD or I can't remember. But anyways, so people like that, and a lot of weird kids, and I don't know if that gave me a strange rep in school, but like I said, by 7th grade, everything pretty much compounded, and my mom decided, okay, I'm going to take you out of that. And, it was okay, homeschooling. There wasn't any particular curriculum we learned from, and my mom was a Christian lady, so, as far as readings were concerned, we read from the Bible and whatnot. I'm not necessarily I'm not a Christian, but, we read some things from the Bible. I don't even think you could call me a Christian then either. I was still learning things, and I still had my doubts and faith as far as God was concerned. But, we read the Bible. As far as reading was concerned, math, we actually got some DVDs called, or not DVDs, it was VHSs at the time, Matthew C. And we basically did, actually, no, that was for grade 9. Halfway through grade 9, I was learning algebra and stuff like that. There was actually another course that I took before, and that was for grade 7 and 8 mathematics. I can't remember what that course was called, though. But, yeah, and, my relationships with people at that point, when I was getting homeschooled, there were people we had actually moved a lot. I can't really keep track of all the moves that we did. We must have at least moved, 5-6 times in my childhood. But, we met new people in the places where we lived. Usually we only lived there for about maybe a year or two or year and a half, and then we'd move to another place. But all the while, we met with some people, we made some friends. Some people, the relationships just broke down because, as a result, either it was they did something that was bad, or I just interpreted it as bad. Either way, relationships would break down and stuff. Then when I was about 13, we moved to North Bay. My mistake. We didn't move to North Bay. We lived in North Bay for the longest time. And then my mom got remarried. Actually, that's something pretty complicated. I'm not going to get into that. But either way, there was something that happened basically that created a situation where we were going to move to southern Ontario, particularly a place called Ayton. A small village I think it's about an hour north of Kitchener and an hour south of Owen Sound, along that road. I'm not sure if it's, no, It wouldn't be. It would be directly south of Owen Sound. I know that, or more or less, anyways. Gray Road 4. That's not important, but either way, I lived there for about 5 years, and Hanover is actually the closest place where there was a high school, and that's actually where I went to high school, halfway through grade 9. So, truth is, grade 9 was a pretty hard year for me because I had to crunch a lot of courses in order to get that extra, to get the courses that would have actually been in the first semester and the second semester. Now they're all crunched into one semester. So, it wasn't the best year for me, but I mean, it was the start of something at least. And I had made a commitment to myself that I was going to make sure, like, because as far as North Bay was concerned, it was like everywhere I went, my demons basically followed me. And by demons, I don't necessarily mean those mythological things or whatnot. I'm specifically talking about the problems that would follow me from place to place. Whether it was my inability to understand communication as far as what, quote, normal people, unquote, would do as far as socializing with one another, or other things, but I just basically said, I'm going to start, this is my chance to start over from scratch, and I'm going to try and make the best that I can out of it. So, first year, I met some people. Actually, it was the drug crowd, or at least that's what they were considered. Yes, they did do drugs, but, I mean, I didn't get involved with the activities that they did. Probably the only reason why I got involved with them was because they were, you know what, at heart, they were decent people. People that wouldn't judge you based on your looks or whatever. It was like, hey, you know what, we have no problem with you. There were some people that were kind of antsy, but I mean, even most of the crowd understood, yeah, they have problems. So, I mean, I didn't stay with that crowd for forever. They kind of disbanded as they were sort of in, their last years. So, but by 11th grade, I sort of met some people that my brother sort of got into a crowd with, and they weren't druggies necessarily, but they were also considered to be the outcasts of society. They didn't fit into any particular niche. Is that the word? Actually, I'll look it up while I'm talking. But either way, as far as that's concerned, these were decent people, and I think it was actually a good start to something new, because it was grade 10. Well, grade 9 was it could have been better. It could have been a lot better. Grade 10 was decent. Grade 11 went a little bit downhill from grade 10, but it was better than grade 9. My grade 12 year, now that was probably the best year I ever had in school. First and second, but more so the first. And I think that was because at that point I was sort of understanding how human connection basically worked. Basically the way people talk and that sort of thing. And all that time I was listening. I didn't talk very much. Even when I was a little kid, I didn't talk a lot. I listened. I listened to what people were saying. I listened to everything. Even when people weren't talking to me, I listened to everything. And you know what? Some people can say that's creepy or whatever, but you know what? I have no use for something like that. Like, for me, it helped me to understand people. Understand the way people think, the way people interact with one another. And although I'm not necessarily inside their head, knowing exactly what they're thinking, people have the ability to communicate with decent precision what they're thinking through words, or what they want you to think, rather. But either way, most people are pretty honest about how they feel. So I listened, I learned, and even in grade 12, I was listening a lot. But I was reaching a point where I could actually give back some thought, some feedback based on what they were saying. And I actually enjoyed human interaction at that point. I almost think of it as that turning of age for me in particular, because I started to understand who people were and why they did the things that they did. And I became very, very open-minded to those sorts of things. Mind you, I was still someone that tried to be a pleaser of others rather than a pleaser of myself, which isn't a bad thing, but at the same time, it also meant I wasn't addressing my own personal needs. And at that point, I still wasn't my own individual self. I was someone who was pleasing others. But either way, I did a second year of grade 12, and that was all right. I finished up, and then we moved again. We moved to Sault Ste. Marie, or rather outside of Sault Ste. Marie, north of Bruce Mines. And we lived there, my mother and her husband. And I went to college at Sault College. And you know what? In truth, I wasn't ready for it. Because college is more of an independent life. I was still at the point where I was still that person that pleases others. I wasn't my individual self. I didn't even know what my individual self was at that point. And I was like, 18, 19, 20, something like that. I wasn't my own person. I was a pleaser of others, but I wasn't a pleaser of myself. And as a result, I actually suffered. My first year was kind of okay. My second year, well, actually no, my first year wasn't good. My second year was terrible. I did pass it. I did pass my course, but in my mind, it wasn't a pass at all. It was a failure. It was, you know what? It was a waste of money. And if I was actually more assertive and told my mom what I needed, rather than just sitting around and letting things play out the way they were, I probably would have more money as far as my college fund was concerned. I wouldn't have wasted money. I did learn some things from the course that I took. No doubt. I actually took computer networking. And I did learn some things. No doubt. I did enjoy the experience. But at the same time, it could have been a more efficient use of my time if I went there when I was prepared to do so. So, as far as that was concerned, I finished I finished that part of the course. I told my mom when I went to visit my dad. It got complicated at that point, but I basically said, I have to leave. I have to do my own thing. I have to learn who I am. And I even told her, as far as this relationship with God is concerned, that may be fine for you because you have faith in what you understand. You believe that God is factual because you've experienced something and you have faith that that is God. Therefore, God is factual to you. God is not factual to me because I have not had faith in him through experience. I have not experienced something that is worth saying I have faith in. So I'm sorry, but I have to do my own thing. And it wasn't entirely religious or anything like that, but that was a great part of it, or at least something that sort of tied me to my mother in a sense that was, at that point in my life, maybe for other people it was okay, but at that point in my life it was destructive. It was something that was tying me down. So I left my mom. When I went to visit my dad, I basically told her this, and I stayed with my dad for a little bit. But even then, living with my dad, I still didn't really have the flexibility that I was hoping for. And so, you know what? I had to move away from my dad's as well. I had to move somewhere else. And for a little while, I actually wasn't really doing anything. I had to think a lot about who I am, why am I here, and what am I doing?